Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. All jurors and alternates are present in People versus Robert Durst. The defendant is here with his lawyer, Mr. DeGuerin, and Mr. Chesnoff. Mr. Lewis is present also, though not in the room. We have Mr. Lewin. I don't think. Where'd he go? Oh, he's in the room. He's in the back. Okay. Monitoring. All right. We have Mr. Lewin, Mr. Milius, Mr. Bailey, and Mr. Henderson and Mr. Miata. You may resume your direct examination of Mr. Durst, the defendant.
On the screen is just a blank calendar for February of 1982. I got a little confused on the dates as far as the days were concerned, but now we have it on the screen. And Thursday, the 11th, was the date of the meeting with your family and Mr. Scabetta and Ed Wright, correct?
Correct.
All right. Going forward from there, what happened in the next few days?
On Friday,
Wait a minute. Sweet, check this. All right.
Friday, Dad said, against my good wishes, my good judgment, I am going to go along with what Ed Wright wants to do. And we offered a $100,000 reward for information leading, whatever the language they use is, to Kathy Durst. The newspaper, it worked just like the report that the detective said. We got a zillion calls from people who knew absolutely nothing. And the detectives said they were spending all their time interviewing people to make sure they knew nothing.
Let's stop there.
All right.
All right. Next question.
What happened next? What happened next?
Well, that brings us to the weekend. Really nothing happened next.
What was going on with the press?
Both the Daily News and the New York Post started with cover stories on Saturday and Sunday about the $100,000 reward. One had the cover article said 100G reward.
Okay. That was that weekend of the 13th and 14th. What happened next?
The media petered out by the 16th. I had numerous telephone calls with Gilberto Najami and Mary Hughes and Jimmy McCormack, Kathy's brother and sister. And they seemingly were having a big dispute about whether they believed me or believed Gilberta. Gilberta was telling everybody that I had killed Kathy.
Did you learn that Gilberta, sure, not Gilberta, but Geraldine McInerney and Mary Hughes had gotten into your apartment at Riverside Drive?
Well, they offered Mary Hughes, and Geraldine McInerney the opportunity to look through Kathy's belongings and see if they could find something or other that might be a lead to something or other. Some kind of itinerary or airplane ticket or anything that might give a hint as to why Kathy was doing what she was doing or as to what had happened to Kathy.
So is it the fact that you invited them in, not that they came in without your consent?
Oh no, I invited them in. I met them there.
Is that when they found Kathy's jewelry, her earrings and her wedding ring?
Oh, they made several trips. On one of those trips, they found Kathy's jewelry box, which had her wedding ring in it, and the diamond stud earrings that she wore very frequently.
Was that at Riverside Drive?
Yes.
In the meantime, I believe you had already testified that you went to East 86th Street. Nobody had been there in quite some time. Did you do anything with the East 86th Street apartment?
No.
Okay. So take us through the next week or so and what progress, if any, was made. What happened next?
Well, the detectives called me, or I called them every other day. They really did not have any news. They had questions for me about people that they should talk to, but nobody had any information that was meaningful. Gilberta kept telling everybody Bob killed Kathy, but Gilberta made such a pain in the ass of herself that nobody took anything she said seriously.
Objection calls for speculation. It's also hearsay.
Just a moment.
It's regarding what.
No, I'm going to look at the transcript. What happened next? All right, I'll strike any reference to what Gilberta Najami said or how anyone responded.
Okay, what to your knowledge were Mr. Scapetta and the investigator Ed Wright doing in those weeks? And we're now talking about the week of the 15th of February and even the next week. What were they doing?
They were interviewing, like the detectives were, these people who had leads as to where Kathy might be.
Okay. Now, without without saying what anyone said about that, were you satisfied or not with what was going on?
I was satisfied.
What was your concern? What did you feel?
I mean, I felt miserable. There was nothing I wanted to do.
Were you working?
No,
Were you going to the office?
no.
Where were you staying?
I was staying at Riverside Drive.
So, even after February, getting into March, the next month, Did you see any progress being made?
No.
Did you continue to talk to Kathy's family?
Less and less frequently. There was an argument between Jimmy McCormack, Kathy's brother, and Mary Hughes, Kathy's sister, as to whether they should come back where Mr. Lewin objected last time.
Okay, so the question really is, were you keeping in touch with Kathy's family overall, even though it was less and less?
Mostly with Mary Hughes.
Okay. When, if it did it become obvious that the police were not going to find Kathy?
By March, at the latest, it was evident that this had been put on the back burner someplace, that Detective Strook was doing nothing.
Did you ever lose hope?
No, I don't think so.
Well, in the next year or so, what happened with you and the Durst organization and your work? First, did you go back to work?
I went back to work in May.
In May, what kind of work did you go back to do?
What I had been doing before,
Which was?
being an executive. We were building a building, which was very exciting. There were meetings most of the day.
And what role did you play in these meetings?
Well, by then I had figured out how things worked. I knew what the leasing agent should do, and I knew what the architect should do and what the engineer should do. We were meeting with tenants. We were trying to rent space in the building too.
Where was this building being built?
6th Avenue and 45th Street.
Where is that in relation to Times Square?
It's 1 block east of Times Square. Times Square is from 7th Avenue to 9th Avenue.
And so, how long did this project take?
The building opened in 1984.
Were there other projects that you worked on?
Yes, usually renting stores.
By renting stores, what do you mean?
We had lots of stores to rent.
Explain that, please.
I'm having difficulty with the question. A store is a ground floor space.
Objection relevance.
The question is what he was working on.
Yes, he says he was renting stores, as he explained, clarified, he's renting out ground store spaces. That's fine. Why don't you move to the next question?
So, what other projects did you take part in the next, let's say the next year or two? 84 was when the building opened. In the middle 80s, what were you doing? What was your activity?
Mostly the smaller buildings, doing the stuff landlords do.
And what happened with the South Salem house, the South Salem cottage?
I kept the South Salem cottage
How long?
till 1989.
What happened to the Riverside Drive apartment?
That's where I was living.
What happened to the East 86th Street apartments?
I kept it until the end of 1983.
Well, 83, okay. Did you sublease it or give up the lease? What did you do with that?
I gave up the lease.
All right. So were you still visiting or were you still going to South Salem in the later 80s?
In the weekends, yes.
And so did anything change with your position at the Durst organization?
Well, in June of 1982, I gave an interview to the New York Post, which was the first time that I had spoken to anybody. That turned into a scandal, which adversely affected me in the business.
How did your interview with the New York Post turn into a scandal with your company?
The New York Post brought up that Kathy was missing and that I was a quote-unquote person of interest. They brought up Peter Schwartz and his lawsuit against me. They quoted Gilbert Najami widely. And it was basically a scandal, which makes my doing stuff much more difficult.
I think you said something like this, but was the Durst organization, particularly Seymour, Douglas, anybody that was at the higher echelons of the Durst organization, were they publicity shy or did they want publicity?
Well, not the kind of publicity that I gave them.
So how did that create the problems for you with the Durst organization? That is, this interview that turned out to be so bad in the Post.
There were people who did not want to work with me.
Who were those people?
There were tenants who did not want to work with me.
There's been some, in fact, quite a bit of testimony that, I'm sorry. There's been quite a bit of testimony that you were expected to be the person that took over the Durst organization. Is that correct or not?
Well, sort of. I mean, Seymour was the leader at the time, and I was Seymour's oldest son. But I was not Joseph Durst's oldest grandson. There were older people, my generation.
And were they working in the Durst organization?
Some of them were.
Did you want to take over?
No.
Why not?
Well, I did not want to have my own family. Whoever is running the Durst organization gets to be the daddy to this big extended family. There were 14 members of my generation. And whoever's running the company has got to go to everybody's wedding and bar mitzvah and big birthdays and things like that.
Did you want to do that?
No,
That's the social obligation of being the leader. What about the business obligations? Did you want those?
no,
Why not?
I never loved the business. I got to the point where I liked it well enough and I could do it, but it was not something I loved doing.
So when did it become apparent that you were not going to be the leader and someone else, particularly Douglas, was going to take over?
It was always apparent to me, but it did not become widely known until Dad died,
When did your father die?
1995.
Where were you and what were you doing when that came about?
I was living in Trinidad, California. I got a telephone call around noon from my wife, Debbie. Debbie said,
You said you called her your wife, Debbie. You weren't married to her yet, were you?
we got married in 1988.
I'll allow you to establish this fact, so overruled, but then
All right.
get back to your...
Perhaps we've jumped forward too much. You mentioned living in Trinidad. When did you move to Trinidad?
1992.
In 1992, were you living in Trinidad and working in the Durst organization, or had you quit working for the Durst organization?
I pretty much quit working in the Durst organization in the late 1980s. I still had an office and I received a salary, but I went very infrequently.
So, really, were you effectively working there or not?
I was ineffectively working there.
So, how did you decide to move to Trinidad?
Well, I had visited Humboldt County. A good friend of mine from UCLA back in the 1960s, who was in the same program I was in, had bought land contiguous to the redwood forest. And I had visited him several times. I had gone up there with Kathy twice. We had talked about moving there when I retired. Kathy had gone to the Humboldt County Hospital and looked into jobs as nurses. So I was familiar with Trinidad. And when I started leaving New York, Humboldt County was where I decided I was going to go.
So Humboldt County and Trinidad, California, for anyone, and for the record, is where in California?
Northern California,
North of San Francisco?
well north of that, 5 hours drive north of San Francisco.
And what did you do with your residences in New York? That is Riverside Drive and South Salem, when you bought and moved to Trinidad.
I kept South Salem until 1989 when I sold it. and I kept the Riverside Drive apartment until maybe 1996.
Okay, so when Seymour died in 1995, you still had Riverside Drive?
Yeah,
How often did you go back to New York from Trinidad?
probably half a dozen times a year.
Okay. Did you have any kind of business in Trinidad or office, or what were you doing out there?
I had an office, but I did not really do anything.
Did you? What was your income? I'm not asking dollar amount, but how did you live?
I had the money that I had saved from the past 20 years' income from the trust, and the trust continued to pay out very substantial sums.
Okay, so you mentioned that you learned of Seymour's death for the phone call, and you were in Trinidad. Had you pretty much completely quit the Durst organization by then?
Yes,
There's been evidence about Douglas Durst taking over. Was that something that bothered you or made you angry or upset you in any way?
made me glad it was over, the fight was over. Up until, say, 1992, I felt obligated to fight to run the family business, which I did not want to do.
You say you felt obligated to fight to run it. What do you mean by that?
I tried to make the things that I did in the business very successful, and I tried to make the things that Douglas was doing very unsuccessful. And Douglas did the same thing with me.
But once Douglas took over, how did it happen that Douglas took over?
Well, it didn't legally happen until Dad died.
But effectively, factually, practically, did he take over before Seymour died?
Probably 1991, 1992.
How did that come to pass?
He just gradually started doing everything, and I gradually started doing nothing.
Did you resent that, or were you angry with Douglas over that?
I've been angry with Douglas my whole life.
I understand that, but I'm talking about over the succession to the leadership of the Durst organization.
I did not like the way Douglas did it.
But did you like the result?
I was glad when it was over.
All right. When Seymour died, you're living in Trinidad, Humboldt County. What did you do? What were your plans from there after Seymour died?
Well, then I spent less time in New York.
Did you go to Seymour's memorial service?
He did not really have a memorial service. 6 months before he died, Dad had a pretty good idea that he was dying, and he told everybody that he did not want them to make a big fuss when he died.
Did you see him?
Specifically,
Sorry.
he did not want the office to close for the day, as had been done when his father died. He did not want a memorial with speeches.
Did you see him before he died?
About 3 weeks before he died.
Did you travel to New York to see him?
Well, I was in New York, and I saw him.
All right. So after Seymour died, what living plans did you make? What were you doing with yourself?
I was living in Trinidad. I lived in Trinidad pretty much full time from 1992 really to 2000.
Who is Debbie Cheriton?
She was my girlfriend in the mid-80s, from say 1986 to 1988, 89. I said that wrong. From 1980, we met in 1988, and we lived together until we got married in the late 90s.
Are you getting confused?
I feel like saying I'm always confused, but yes, I am having difficulty with all these dates.
Okay. Well, let's cover it a different way. You and Debbie lived together for a while. What years did you live together?
1988 to 1996.
Did you stop living together?
Yes,
Did you get married before you stopped living together or not?
got married after we stopped living together.
Okay, we'll get to the marriage in a moment. Did you misspeak a moment ago when you said you married earlier?
Yes,
Okay. So I want to ask you about Susan. During the time that you were living in Northern California, traveling sometimes 6 times a year to New York, during that period of time,
how about Susan?
hold on, I haven't asked my question yet. So from the period of time I'm asking about is the late 80s until the, after Seymour died, let's say the late 90s. Where was Susan Berman living during that time?
Los Angeles,
When did she move from New York to Los Angeles?
1984.
Did you and Susan see each other? You and Susan Berman see each other during that period of time? That's a big period of time, I understand. We'll get more specific in a minute. Did you and Susan see each other from time to time during that period of time?
Well, I'm not sure what period of time we're talking about.
Late 80s to late 90s.
So Susan moved to Los Angeles in 1984 in order to work with Linda Opes on her screenplay.
That was a screenplay from her book,
Yes,
and the book, the title of the book once again was,
Easy Streets.
and did that ever get made into a movie?
No,
To your knowledge, was there a dispute, even to the point of getting
yes,
lawyers over that?
Such irrelevance.
Sustained. And restricted.
May I ask it a different way, Your Honor? Do you know whether do you know the reason that Linda Opes never made the movie out of Susan's book?
Susan
Sustained.
accused Linda Opes.
Sustained.
Motion to strike whatever answer he said.
I don't think
Second.
All right. So Susan moved to Los Angeles to make the movie. It didn't get made. What happened next with Susan, if you know?
Susan accused Linda Obst of working on other projects.
Objection, motion to strike is non-responsive.
Non-responsive, stricken. Mr. Durst, we've moved to a different subject. Mr. DeGuerin is going to ask you a different question. Please listen to that question. Take a pause, make sure you understand it, and then answer the question. All right?
You speak very softly, Your Honor.
Can you read what I said?
Read what he said.
Yes.
And Your Honor, for the record, I'm sure everybody's seen it, but I try to pause what's going on when it's appropriate. So watch me when I'm paused.
Oh, I can look at Lewin.
Either way, speak right into that microphone, all right, Mr. Durst?
Don't do that.
You won't charge a stone, Dick.
Well, that's debatable. Let's get to another subject. How often were you seeing Susan during this period of time? We're talking about 10
But
years.
now, what period of time?
Okay, late 80s to late 90s.
So late 80s. 1986, she married Mr. Margolis. I walked her down the aisle
Where did that happen?
at the Bel Air Hotel in Los Angeles.
We've heard evidence about that union, and what happened to Mr. Margolis?
6 months after Susan married him, he overdosed on heroin and killed himself.
Describe for the jury what your relationship with Susan Berman was during that time. We're right when she married Mr. Margolis, you walked her down the aisle until he killed himself.
This states that
I was still living in New York in 1986. We saw each other probably 2 or 3 times a year and spoke very frequently. When I moved to Trinidad, more or less full-time in 1992, she visited me 2 times for about a week each time.
I want to show you a letter that has been referenced before in evidence. It's our number 16. I'm not sure what the actual number is.
thank you.
Is it a People's Exhibit?
Yes, it's 146. It's part 146 is 30 pages, and this is two pages of 146.
Are those pages individually marked? Probably not.
No,
What do we
they
call
were
it?
not.
They're handwriting exemplars.
This is part of the handwriting stuff.
Wait a
So
minute,
let's,
that's not the
let's
right-
mark, I don't think there's harm in
Wait a minute.
occasionally overlapping a little bit. I thought the
Come
count,
out.
Miscommunication.
I'm gonna refer to, that calendar that we were discussing can be I, and if you find a document you want, that'll be J. It's a blank calendar, but it might be useful for reference. And the lawyers referred to it.
Reference as being part of the handwriting exemplars threw me off, Your Honor. But nonetheless, it's the same letter.
The calendar is I, and this document will be defense J.
All right.
We'll mark it twice. It's also people's exhibit. This way they can focus on it.
Right, Bob, can you see that? Can you read that? If not, I can read it to you. On the screen, the first page is has a letterhead, Robert Durst, on Avenue of the Americas, New York, and then it's written in red ink. The first part, it says, Susie, hi, it's me, Bobby. I'm in Mexico, and I'm beginning to see why. Last year, my sister, you remember high school Wendy and Howdy Doody Dougie, who year in and year out invite everyone to Thanksgiving, but no one ever goes, and everybody is ready with their excuses. Had Thanksgiving on the Sunday before Thanksgiving, so we were all caught without excuses, and we all went, and I had a nice time and drove down from Salem, and Seymour only stayed for 3 hours, so I was in the city by 5. I'm going to stop you there. This letter is not dated. Seymour died in 1995, so obviously Seymour was still alive when you wrote this letter, correct?
Correct.
Continuing with the letter. Then on the real Thanksgiving, I went with Emily and her overly extended family, about 30, including kids over 16, and had a nice Thanksgiving on Central Park West, and listened to knee-jerk liberal talk, and left by myself and went to see, trivia question, 12-hour documentary about Holocaust shown in 2 parts. Stopping there for a moment. Were you intending to be humorous about what you had just experienced?
I guess.
Was this typical of the kind of relationship you had with Susan, to be sarcastic and humorous?
I guess.
Okay. Continuing. From then, I descended into a physical and mental bottomless pit of staying up all night, stuffing my face. Walking, I go at 5 a.m., taking a pill, sleeping till noon, getting to work out. Move the letter, please. Next page. 3 till 8, having dinner with or without friends, and start all over again until Xmas, when I hit nadir. Went to Marriott Marquis, Times Square, got stoned, Xmas Day, saw 2 p.m. show of Al Pacino in Revolution. Ugh. Let me stop there. I think the critics all agreed with you about that. This is on a different piece of stationery, Fiesta Americana. The logo is shown at the top. Were you in Mexico when you wrote this, if you remember?
Yeah, I feel like objecting, I'm doing relevance.
Well, let him do that. It's going to get relevant here in just a moment. My question is, though, were you in Mexico when you wrote this, if you remember?
I went to Mexico, but I assume I wrote it when I was in Mexico.
Well, the first page, the reason I asked, the first page is on your stationery with your letterhead, and the second page is on Fiesta Americana. Were you just using two different pieces of paper?
You're asking me to guess.
Well, if it's a guess, don't guess. Let me go forward. And here's where it gets relevant. So this is what I want to do this year for Xmas. I want to get us 2 rooms at La Costa, or whatever spa and resort you would like to go to, from a couple of days before Xmas to a couple after, semicolon. 4 days, maybe a week, and I'll meet you there. Figured all this out during last couple of days. I hope this is something you would like to do and that you haven't yet made Xmas plans. Love, Bobby. My question is, did you and Susie spend Christmas together after this letter?
Vague as to time. This letter's from prior to 95, so.
Let's establish the time and then ask if they spent that Christmas together.
Do you know exactly what time it was that you sent this letter?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Susan and I went to La Costa on 3 occasions.
Did you go to La Costa on an occasion where she made the reservations?
Well, she had contacts there who she knew from Las Vegas.
And did you go to La Costa over a Christmas?
I remember at least one Christmas, yes.
So I guess the question I'm asking you, did you establish a more or less habit or custom of spending Christmas sometimes with Susan?
Yes.
You already said you went to La Costa several times. When was the first time you went?
The year that Mr. Margolis killed himself, the Christmas after that we went.
So does that put a date on this letter for you?
This would have come after that. That was 86. So this would have come after that sometime or other.
Okay.
But it could really have been any time.
Okay. So, thank you, you can take it down. And for the record, that was Defendant's Exhibit I, Your Honor.
That's J.
J.
I'm marking that calendar for you.
Thank you. So, in the ensuing years, and I don't want to jump ahead too far of our timeline, in the ensuing years, did you and Susie spend Christmas times together from time to time?
Yes.
All right. Now, in early November of 2000, this is jumping ahead, and in the October 2000, where were you living?
I had sold 37 Riverside Drive and bought an apartment in Battery Park City. I was living in my apartment in Battery Park City.
Did you still have the property in Humboldt County?
I sold my house in Humboldt County in 1999. I still had the office I rented, which was outfitted as a live-in office.
So you could stay, meaning sleep, live in the office in Humboldt County?
Occasionally,
And did you occasionally?
yes.
Where was your primary residence in the fall of 2000?
Battery Park City, Manhattan, New York.
For the jury's information, where is Battery Park City? What part of Manhattan?
It's right next to the World Trade Center.
So in very lower Manhattan.
Yeah.
Did you have other residences at that time? We're focusing on September, October, November of 2000.
I owned a house in Ridgefield, Connecticut, which is about an hour north of Manhattan. I owned a townhouse in San Francisco and a condominium in San Francisco, but I had not moved into either of them at that point.
All right. When did you get the townhouse in San Francisco?
Sometime in the year of 2000. Same thing with the condominium.
Okay. But where were you spending most of your time doing that? Again, September, October, November of 2000. Where were you spending most of your time?
Either in my condominium in Battery Park City or my excuse me, or my house in Ridgefield, Connecticut.
Did you also have an apartment in Dallas, Texas?
I had an apartment in Dallas, Texas.
When did you have that apartment?
I had it from 1986 until 2000 when I gave it up.
All right.
But I was never spent that much time there.
So you'd given up your home in Humboldt County, but still had an office where you could stay overnight in Humboldt County.
Yeah,
You had an apartment that you didn't use much in Dallas, Texas. You had the home in Ridgefield, Connecticut. You had your apartment in Battery Park City. Was there any other place that you had at that time?
Battery Park City, Ridgefield, a townhouse in the condominium in San Francisco, and the rental apartment in Dallas was everything.
All right, it's now 12 o'clock. Do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. We'll resume at 1:30 p.m. I have yes. Yes, Mr. Chesnoff?
Mr. Lewis. Your Honor, I've sent you an email and copied Mr. Lewis. I'll happily talk to you about it privately.
probably something better for your own eyes.
Yes, I'll talk with Deputy Washington when he's available about your report.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Recess 1:30.
Don't leave, go out here real quick.